back of my AP style book I've forgotten about called computer terms.
Computer terms.
It has artificial intelligence, a computer that thinks like a human. Currently, computers cannot apply experience, logic, and prediction to problem solving. They act only on instructions either from the program or from the user. It does not still have internet.
Does it have a network?
It has LAN.
Ooh.
Acronym for local area network. Spell out. An interconnected group of personal computers and a main computer. Log off can either be 2 words or hyphenated.
What about log in?
Log off, 2 words when using as a verb. Log off hyphenated when using as a noun or adjective.
Is this still your 1989
Yes.
AP stuff?
Oh yes, no, absolutely. I'll be following this one, which means I will not be saying the word internet from now on. I keep it right next to my Chicago Manual of Style that tells me to use the Oxford comma.
See, that's where I get confused because isn't the AP also Chicago?
No, AP is Associated Press.
But okay.
What are you trying to say? Is the AP in Chicago?
No, I was just getting the two of them confused.
Oh yeah, no, they're two separate.
Because the entire time I was like pretty sure they actually recommend the Oxford comma, but I was
the Chicago Manual of Style does. And at Tech TV,
and who wouldn't follow
this may be in the this may be in the back of your mind. At Tech TV, Andy Guest made us use the Chicago Manual of Style instead of the AP Style book, and it drove me nuts.
Andy Guest. Wow, I haven't thought about him in a while.
Oh, he used to show up. Wasn't he the one that showed up super early in the office and then blast music when no one was in the office?
Well, he was the managing editor. If that's, I don't know about. I think he did show up.
I never showed up early, so I wouldn't know.
Because I used to show up early, pretty regularly, just because
he was on the other side of the office from me, though, so I never heard him if he did.
Well, he would only blast, but when everyone started walking in, he would turn it off.
He also, I know he took naps. He very much advocated taking naps.
Where would you take a nap at Tech TV?
Under his desk.
Oh,
Alex Castle did that.
I saw Martin do.
I
think it was for fun.
You're breaking up.
You started cutting out again for some reason.
Shit. Do I have time to restart or?
Yeah, go for it. We'll make time.
Right.
Justin will regale us with tales of the Amish.
Yeah. So I've been talking about Amish people. Apparently, I found out in my solicitation of communication throughout many of the Amish communities that technology is not verboten. In fact, there is a sliding scale that is oftentimes downright permissive of technology amongst Amish communities, and it varies very greatly from church to church.
A sliding scale, you say?
Yes.
Yeah, many are as permissive as you can use technology outside of the home. Many even more are permissive of you being allowed to use technology for your business only. But all seem to at least share the common core that you should shun technology in the home. That the home is safe.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing as you're telling me this, Justin, is we could have a segment on this show called Top 5 Phones for the Amish.
Yes. Indeed. There was somebody who wrote in, I don't know if you heard this, but for everybody else, that had got on a buggy ride in the year 2000, and the Amish greeter, had a smartphone on, whatever, a BlackBerry, I'm assuming. But something that was advanced, and the emailer was lamenting the fact that he did not have a smartphone until 7 years after he saw that Amish greeter.
It's because they're trendsetters.
I mean, but that's
amazing.
I was kind of hoping the holy grail of bringing up that topic on Jury was to have an Amish person email in, right? I would take a wild guess, specifically because this is about the edge and developing of technology, that no doubt have you had dozens, if not more, Amish listeners to the Tom Merritt Tech News franchises throughout the years.
Yeah.
I would assume that we will be heard by an Amish person on this show.
Mm-hmm. And if you are that person and would like to write in, please do.
Maybe not Good Day Internet, but
it reminds me a little of the German Baptist, or is it the Bernhof Brotherhood or whatever? They and the Amish and the Mennonites all have like a very
there's actually several.
Are you talking about the Pennsylvania Dutch?
No, I'm talking about something that was in California that he grew up with that they called the German Baptists.
I thought because that was the Pennsylvania Dutch are actually German.
Yes, the Pennsylvania Deutsch.
The old German Baptist Brethren is
yes
what Roger's referring.
And what I learned was that they could use technology, but it could only be for a very functional purpose. For example, if it was to help with farming or to sell goods or to communicate like a telephone. But it couldn't be worldly. In other words, you could have one telephone, but you can have a telephone in everyone's bedroom kind of thing. Or you could have a television in order to get the news, but you couldn't have cable TV because that would be too worldly to have, a service that provided entertainment. Anything that would distract from the spiritual nature of the home or of your life was considered to be worldly. So you could have a pickup truck.
Let's all three of us take care and not pretend to speak on the behalf of any of these things. We're probably getting something wrong, and we know that. We're just doing our best to describe what we know about it.
Well, this is what one of them explained to me, and so
understand it. This is what they.
As I can recall, this is what he was saying to me.
I just know how that goes when somebody's like, "You got it all wrong. That's not what we believe at all." Like, okay, fine. Like,
listen,
this is just what Roger remembers somebody telling.
Yeah, it's 25 years ago. My memory isn't picture perfect, so I'm probably adding maybe a few inconsistencies. But as long as there was something, that was technological that allowed you to accomplish something that was considered to be productive, it was okay. It just couldn't be worldly or replace any kind of spiritual activity in your life.
We're buying a little time for Sarah to troubleshoot a little technology issue and rejoin us if you're watching live. Oh. She's coming back now. Roger, don't forget to adjust your timing to compensate.
No.
I'm so sorry.
No worries. I've already taken in the time considerations in my head.
Okay.
All right.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so ready.
Me too.
I'm going to talk some Samsung. Here hold on. Thanks to everyone who supports Daily Tech News Show directly. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Thursday, August 9th, 2018 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Scooter Lane.
From Oakland, California, I'm Justin Robert Young.
You're back to Scooter. I love it. Is that in honor of Samsung?
Know. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, of course it is. Our producer, Roger Chang, is here as well. Roger, how are you?
I'm good, if a little hot.
You sure are.
Thank you.
Somebody mentioned that somewhere. I think it was on Patreon. Roger's a little hot. And I wrote,
yes. That's the photo I used.
Okay. No comments about Roger's appearance. Let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Samsung announced the new Samsung Galaxy Note 9 starting at $999.95. The company also announced the Galaxy Watch, replacing the Gear brand name, starting at $329, and teased a smart speaker called Galaxy Home with more details slated for an event coming in November. We have lots more to say about this and all the other announcements Samsung delivered a little later in the show.
Turns out Kiki does love him. Drake has set several new streaming records, 1 billion album streams in a single week, single day records for Apple Music and Spotify. And as Universal Music announced Thursday, the first artist to top 50 billion streams total across all streaming platforms.
Boy, that's more than Kiki likes him. Yeah. That's a lot of people. Comcast Xfinity exposed partial home addresses and social security numbers of more than 26.5 million customers, according to a security researcher called Ryan Stevenson, who discovered the security flaws. BuzzFeed News contacted Comcast. Comcast told them the exploit is now patched. They disabled something called in-home authentication, which was supposed to allow you to pay your bill without having to log in. Apparently, that was a bad idea. They've disabled that. And also an insecure sign-up page for Comcast authorized dealers that was subject to a brute force attack. So they have solved both of those. But Social Security number, not really good to have exposed out there. So you might want to check with Comcast about what you can do about that. Let's talk a little bit more about Discord.
Discord. They launched a video game beta program in Canada Thursday for 50,000 randomly selected customers with free games for people who pay for Discord Nitro, starting with 10 titles and a curated store. Discord takes 30% of sales. Plus, if you want Discord can scan your PC to see what games you have and give you a tab where you can launch any game that you own right from Discord. So this
biggest headline miss on this is it's coming to Canada first. Way to go, Canada.
Yes. No, there we go. Canada, the beta test of countries. They are really going for the Steam market on this and saying, look, all we need is a bunch of active people that are obviously going to be playing video games for us to have that platform staked out that we can do so much more. I think the idea of being a PC game launcher is brilliant. And another way that they can make themselves known as, oh, also I can just buy this indie game here instead of opening up another application in Steam, which I think many PC gamers probably just have open all the time anyway.
Well, and Steam's trying to be more Discord-like in its chat because they see this writing on the wall. And I do think Discord is in position to eat Steam's lunch. They're not ready to do it yet. Doing curated games is their way of saying, we're going to start small, see if this works, see if people like it, and then we'll come for you, Steam.
It is much harder for Steam to become Discord than it will be for Discord to become Steam, because what Discord has solved is moderation and threading and getting a lot of those things that are very, very, very difficult to get right. They have perfected it with their community.
Beatmaster asks, but can Discord release Half-Life 3?
No, not yet.
Well, guess who is releasing something? That's Amazon. Announced a new open source auto SDK for adding voice control to car infotainment systems, including features like navigation, media, climate control, as well as smart speaker stuff like controlling smart home devices and using skills built for the Echo. The SDK is free on GitHub. Ford, Toyota, Mercedes, Hyundai, General Motors, and other automakers have integrated it on various levels, but the team behind the SDK was formed last year to compete with Apple's CarPlay, which is more integrated, also Android Auto, and SoundHound, which Hyundai uses in its cars, and the NVIDIA Drive autonomous vehicle platform.
Yeah, it's about time Amazon got into the auto game. This is a big area of development for tech companies. They all want to win the dashboard war, and being able to, I don't know, if you could customize your Amazon voice service in your car to respond to the name Kit, perhaps they could get an advantage.
Certainly so. There's obviously been a large coordinated effort. Amazon has kind of made their name consistently with this product to be everywhere that anybody wants to have them. Tom, I'm surprised that you're able to talk about this without your left eye twitching, as the war for the gated empires and the further walled gardening of another element of our lives normally sets you off.
No, you're right. Well, I think maybe it doesn't bother me because I have such an old car. I'm like, it's not going to affect me. I'm still plugging in through a cassette adapter, so we're all good on my end. Yeah, because you're right. Like and also I know that the automotive companies really want to lock this stuff down even more. So it almost feels more open that they're willing to partner with Apple and Amazon. Like, oh wow, they're actually letting go of a tiny bit of control. This is amazing.
Well, I think they've actually tried, right? Because initially they tried to roll their own tech, and then they tried to partner with other tech companies to have them kind of white label their tech, but with their name on it as well, like Ford did with the Sync with Microsoft. And now it's like, whatever. Now, sure, Google, Apple, Amazon, just throw your thing that people like in there.
Yeah. Well, and if you're using an Echo at home, now all the stuff that you already installed would be available in the car. It's kind of cool. All right. People complain sometimes that we don't talk about new innovative technologies enough, that we always talk about the big five. Is it five now? And FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Well, here, how about Panasonic? Are they small enough for you? Panasonic announced a new shoe deodorizer called the MSDS 100. You plug it in, place the nodes into your shoes, and it sends ions into the shoes to eliminate the odors. 2 modes, normal and long, run for 5 to 7 hours, respectively. Last summer, Panasonic launched a deodorizing hanger that works in the similar way. And now, what you've done for your shirt, you can do for your shoes. The device will be available in Japan on September 20th, of course, and Panasonic is only making 1,000 of these things. So if you want one, you're going to have to jump on it quick. Also, you're going to have to believe that ions can somehow get rid of odors.
Also, I mean, first, Japan, obviously.
Yes.
Second, 5 to 7 hours, depending on how much deodorizing you need. Like, why do you need 5, even at the low level?
I mean, I assume it is something that is obviously a leave it in your shoe overnight kind of situation.
Right.
It very much does seem to be a Japanese-centric product. They if you're sharing a small apartment, which the apartments are in general smaller
Okay. All right.
here in the West.
A share house, like Terrace House.
A shared, exactly. This I'm sure will be a hit on Terrace House. I don't know if it works, but I'm so excited to find out if it does.
It doesn't work. These ions, the only ionic deodorizers that work are the ones that have carbon filters, and they work because they have carbon filters. Like, there's no science showing ions somehow get rid of odors.
You are calling Panasonic snake oil salesman. This is a fraudulent product. They are defrauding.
I am not calling them fraudulent. That would be libel. I am absolutely not doing that. I am saying that ions don't really get rid of odors.
That they're only making 1,000.
I'm saying there's no.
They're not
evidence.
actually calling this like a consumer product that a lot of people are going to buy.
I need to see a review. Panasonic, I will review your product. You're welcome.
Please, you can contact us, feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We'll get you in touch with Jerry. All right. Roku. What are they doing?
Well, Roku launched its free ad-supported streaming video channel on the web and Samsung smart TVs, so you can watch it even if you don't have a Roku device. Company plans to roll it out for PCs, phones, and tablets too. The Roku updated the nav on its own devices to add a new section called Featured Free, which lets you see and click to watch free content regardless of channel. Variety previously reported Roku is planning to launch its own subscription channels market, similar to Amazon's add-on subscriptions for Prime Video. In its earnings report, Roku reported a rise in average revenue per user of 48%. It also reported a $526 million profit versus $15.5 million loss for the same time last year. The sun's coming out for Roku.
Roku's the number one over-the-top maker, despite, what you might hear from Amazon and Apple about their products. It is making a lot of money based on advertising now and services. So expect to see more of Roku. They're not abandoning their set-top boxes, but they're moving a lot into being the default operating system for televisions, and they're moving a lot into providing streaming services that is sort of a reverse Apple and Amazon. Apple and Amazon started with their ecosystems. We've got iTunes. We've got Prime Video. Now we're putting them in our device, by our device, and live in our world. Roku's like, our world is open. Everybody can use it. Actually, let's also create a service around that open world that can push you into any free content that's out there. I think it's brilliant.
Have either of you used a Roku app in a Samsung TV or otherwise off a Roku hardware device?
I have not. I've always used, because they're so cheap and usually pretty good, the Roku devices themselves.
Tom?
Nope. I haven't. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, me either.
I know I'm wrecking my brain here because I'm.
No, I mean, I think it's a nice thing to be offering. I'm just like, I wonder how much Roku thinks they're going to get out of that.
Well, look, I mean, there are a lot of people that want to interact with not only the things that Roku brings them, primarily Netflix and a few other subscription kind of services, which is what I've always used Roku for traditionally, but also free content. You can't knock free content.
Well, and the average revenue is going up per user. So obviously they're making some money off the advertising somehow.
Yeah.
Well, shall we move to space, everyone?
Yes, let's all move to space.
U.S. Vice President Pence gave details on to the Department of Defense about a new U.S. branch of the military called Space Force by 2020. You may have heard of it before. Now we have more details. The branch would help protect freedom, private property, and the rule of law in space. This would be the first new U.S. military branch since 1947. So that's significant. A DoD report says the project will need to create a U.S. Space Command, create a new U.S. Space Operations Force, set up a space development agency to develop technologies for the Space Force, and create a new cabinet position for civilian oversight called the Assistant Secretary of Defense of Space.
I mean, first of all, this is a brilliant propaganda campaign.
I mean, how is this not like a movie plot I'm reading?
All of these terms sound amazing. Like, I want to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense of Space.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily need to get into military history here. Roger and I were talking before the show, and every criticism and or positive about Space Force can also be applied to the Air Force and its creation back in 1947. But the one question I thought we might consider on this show is, do we need a police force in space? Maybe military, maybe not. But do we, it's getting crowded up there. We've got private companies that are starting to launch regularly into space. And once you have private citizens involved and it gets crowded, you start to need somebody to arbitrate and set the rules.
Let's also be clear. Do yourself a favor when you're thinking about this. And I specifically mean to the intellectual DTNS audience. Try to separate what this really is, which is effectively a separate budget. The Air Force really, really wanted to lobby to have this be under their jurisdiction. They were overruled, and now it's going to be a separate thing. What this effectively means is that they get their own budget, and they can disagree with the Air Force on where they want to draw the line of what they get to do. And now they're on equal footing as opposed to the top brass of the Air Force being able to squash what a space-focused agency would do. It also effectively gives them their own R&D budget that doesn't have to be partialed out of an Air Force budget. This is something that I think if we were to separate it from the very loud political situation that we are in right now, would be something that would seem very incremental in a world where reusable rockets are making access to space very cheap, where we have a situation where knocking satellites out of orbit would probably be the first step to a larger, God forbid, war between mega powers. I think that it's something that is fairly sensible, and really the only difference between Space Force and the Air Force doing it is its own budget.
Well, I'm going to interject in here very quickly because I don't want to overrun too much time. A lot of the analysis I've said is that a Space Force is probably something we'll need in the future, but as for current demands and our current functions, it's more of a bureaucratic cost that the Pentagon itself doesn't want to burden itself with, because they're actually in the midst of trying to increase the amount of efficiencies and cooperation between all the branches of the military, where just creating another silo doesn't necessarily help achieve that.
You let us know what you think. We've got all kinds of ways to get in touch with us. And if you're like, hold on, I just want to hear the headlines sometimes. I don't have time for all of this discussion. The Daily Tech Headlines each day in about 5 minutes by subscribing to dailytechheadlines.com. All right, let's get into these Samsung announcements because they announced, I think, nothing that was surprising, but a lot of stuff. So let's start with the Samsung Galaxy Note 9. And it's 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And the backbends and acrobatics Samsung went through to say, look, we brought UL in. This is a very safe battery, not going to explode. They didn't say not going to explode, we promise, because then it would explode probably. But they everything short of that, they said. And this battery is going to last you all day with heavy use, probably last you more than a day, maybe a day and a half or two if you use it lightly. That seems to be the takeaway, is everybody's like, yeah, it's basically better specs than every other phone out there because it's bigger and has a bigger battery, but it's not necessarily a new design, and there's nothing unusual about it. It's a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED display, 2560 by 1440. They did not put the fingerprint sensor under the screen. It's fingerprint sensor on the back. It's a little better position than it was on the Note 8, but otherwise it's the same one. USB-C, headphone jack, Dolby Atmos 3D surround sound. Still has the Bixby key on the right, and either an Exynos 9810 or a Snapdragon 845 processor inside. There's an LTE 1.2 gigabit per second Cat 18 modem in there, a dedicated machine learning chip. So the phone itself, I don't know. I mean, real quickly, you guys, do either of you disagree with me that it's just a bigger, better version of the Note?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly bigger and slightly thicker, but just slightly. Otherwise, I mean, it's kind of like the Note 8.
Yeah.
The fact that it's thicker is kind of interesting to me, because I feel like in our very mature smartphone world, we are now finding there are just certain people. We have just the paths have forked between Android and iOS to a point where I don't even think that really you can. I mean, sure, everyone's going to find a reason to argue about the specs on either one, but we have now laid so much track behind us of where we like, why we like the phones that we like and how that is interacting with the communities, that now I'm more interested in like, oh no, am I a gigantic phone battery lasts for 1,000,000 years person, or am I a smaller phone because it's a fashion accessory and something that I want to use and I want it to look really cool kind of person? And that to me is the interesting thing, that now we might be saying, hey, you want to know what? Now we're not going to try to do one size fits all. It's not going to be the biggest and the thinnest. We know that you want the battery that lasts until next week. Like a Fortnite's launching with it. That's our battery length. 2 weeks.
Fortnite exclusive Android debut on not all, but most all modern Galaxy smartphones for the next few days. If you buy a Note 9, you'll get a free skin, actually a few free skins, and 15,000 V-Bucks, Fortnite's virtual currency. Also, Fortnite coming to the Note 8, the Tab S3 and S4, the Galaxy S9s, the S8s, and the S7s. So if you already have one of those phones, you can get it. And I want to go back to what I think is another feature of the Note that's a little bit different outside of the phone itself. It's the new S Pen. The stylus has always been one of the great features about the Note, and the new stylus has Bluetooth LE. So it needs charging. They say 40 seconds in the dock, and it charges while it's in the little slot on the phone, will get you 200 clicks or 30 minutes on standby. And the button now works as a remote. So that you can click through like slides or do some other thing. There's only a few apps that support it yet, but they say they're going to try to get more to support it. That, to me, is an interesting feature when paired with the built-in DeX feature. DeX is Samsung's dockable feature. They used to be promoted most as like, oh, well, you put your phone in a DeX dock and then you can use it as a computer with like a keyboard and mouse. Now what they're saying is with the Note 9, just get a USB-C to HDMI adapter, plug your Note 9 into any television, and you'll get the computer type interface up on the TV. You'll be able to use your phone as the mouse pad, and you can use the stylus both to write things, but also to click through. So suddenly this becomes the perfect presentation machine. You have your presentation on the Note 9, you plug it into the TV, you put the presentation up on the television, you use the stylus to click through your presentation. I mean, it's pretty brilliant.
This is my favorite thing about Samsung, is that there seems to be no other company on this scale that feels almost fearless to say, hey, here's a cool, if narrow, function that we are going to go all the way in on. Because I agree with you, Tom. That's a really, really, really cool idea. Will it be functional? Will it be something that anybody wants to do? Who knows?
Every road warrior, and Note is popular amongst road warriors and business users, is like, oh, that sounds pretty great. Like, I don't have to deal with anybody who's ever tried to do a presentation and hook up a computer to it knows the pain of that, right?
Sure. I mean, you're still gonna have to hook up the deck thing to it, right?
Right.
Like,
no, Samsung's promising it'll be easier. Let's hope they're right.
Sure. Exactly. I mean, I just love it. I love that they're like, no, we're gonna go whole hog. We're gonna make it a button, and we're gonna make sure that we're gonna take the risk that you have to charge it, like that's going to be something that you're willing to want to do to have this kind of functionality on it. I think is cool, and to me, that's really where the stylus kind of should have went. Anyway, I think that we are only now kind of the stylus obviously kind of maligned historically after the iPhone came out. Now, rightly, even through Apple having, the smart pencil having its own sort of rebirth. And I think the more fancy you can make it, the better, the happier I am with the concept of a stylus. Trick it out.
But Justin, do you want a Galaxy Home smart speaker?
Well, there's so few of them. I'm really at this point just so thirsting for yet another smart speaker. Let me ask you this: because I get it with Google. Obviously, Amazon sort of defined the space fairly early on.
Sure.
I think we were all expecting maybe the HomePod to be more functionality, and the tepid sort of response to that has been the fact that it was not more connected into the Siri universe. Does Bixby do you have to be all in on Bixby to want this?
Well, that's your assistant, right?
Yeah.
With the smart speaker. So it's funny that you mentioned the HomePod, because it's like, okay, yeah, tepid, I don't know, numbers, partly because Apple was late to the game, and also because it was expensive. And, when you compare Siri to other smart assistants, you're like, well, does it really matter? Bixby, I don't use regularly, but I do know that people have issues with Bixby. So you have to, you have to, sort of be in on that whole thing. The speaker looks very nice, but we don't actually know the price, and we're not going to know more details. Well, we might before November, but there's another announcement coming in November where the company says it'll flesh out more information. But this seems very late to me, unless it's a very cheap speaker. I don't know many people who are going to be like, yeah, Bixby is my ecosystem of AI.
And just to be fair to Samsung, they did announce a lot of improvements to Bixby that will make it usable. It's conversational now, particularly.
Right.
So hopefully Bixby loses a lot of the problems that people have had with it. They also announced a Galaxy Watch in rose gold, silver, and midnight black colors. Circular face still. Corning Gorilla DX Plus glass. Also 5 atmospheres of pressure, 165 feet to 50 meter submersion. IP68 and MIL STD 810G certifications. No more magnetic strip technology, though. The Samsung Pay is kind of moving away from that as magnetic strips are being deprecated. So this watch only has NFC, available in 46 millimeter and 42 millimeter versions at $330 and $350, coming August 24th. Although if you order before September 8th, you'll get a free watch band. No LTE in the shipping model, but it is an LTE model coming later in 2018. And going back to the Note 9, we didn't mention the camera is almost the same. It's a little bit improved from the Note 8, but they've got a whole scene optimizer AI that will detect what you're taking a photo of. It has 20 categories that it'll try to use, like pets and flowers and sunsets. And the price on the Note is big. 128 gigabytes of storage, 6 gigabytes of RAM, $1,000. 512 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM, $1,250. That pre-order's August 10th, shipping August 24th. So that's a lot.
Hey, remember when? Do you think people will pay $1,000 for a phone? Was a question.
Yeah. Do you think people will pay more than $1,000 for a phone? Yeah. Yes.
1,200? Yes.
I mean, these are unsubsidized prices, though. Part of the sticker shock is for a long time we got used to like, oh, it's only $199 or it's free. Yeah. The original iPhone was $800, I think, $750, $800. If you paid for it a month.
The core audience for that phone, I think, is savvy to the idea that this is something that is, worth it if they really, really want it. They look at it more like a computer than they do a phone. One thing with the watch, I've always loved that face. I really think that the Samsung circular faces look really, really good. I think it's I'm curious to see when they release the LTE version. I think that's just where those devices are going, and I think it's a disappointment that they didn't announce with it.
I think you're right. Although LTE on my Apple Watch, I don't feel like I ever take advantage of it because I've always got my phone.
I actually just got a new one, and I do really like using it for music, streaming music on it when I'm going to work out.
It doesn't work for me for that. If you're in the ecosystem, maybe it works better.
Yeah.
Well, you know who's in our ecosystem? The people on our subreddit. Submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. We are also on Facebook if you want to hang out there. Great. Facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow.
We love getting insights from the smartest audience in the world, and they send them to us by email. Sarah.
Indeed, they do, Tom. This one comes from Brian, who is saying, from what I understand, this is Magic Leap conversation from yesterday, Magic Leap is restricted to specific markets because they're hand delivering units and then helping you fit them and set them up for everything. The Verge actually wrote that in its report yesterday and said, if Magic Leap is operating in the area, this is a zip code because not all zip codes in the US are compatible at this time. The company will deliver the Magic Leap 1 for free, complete with help setting up the system and fitting the headset. If it's not, people can sign up for a wait list.
It almost makes me less likely to order it, knowing that.
I want
somebody in my
the
house.
Magic Leap Geek Squad in my house.
I have been in the past such a stan for Magic Leap because I love that technology. It is based in my old hometown in South Florida, where I went to high school, and yet, man, one day maybe they'll get it together and I'll be able to, with a good conscience, talk about how much I'm excited for Magic Leap. But just, jeez.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brian, though, for the insight. We appreciate that.
Yes, thanks, Brian. And also thanks to Justin Robert Young. Besides being from South Florida, what can people learn about you and where can they go?
All right. Well, I usually come on here and I talk about my free political newsletter. It's a free political newsletter. Guess what? It's still free. It's still political. It's still a newsletter 5 days a week, 5 stories a day, mostly gifts, few hot takes. Most of the gifts are from the Chappelle Show. But also, many of you might remember about a year ago, I kickstarted a new card game called Action News, the game of television news. And I am here to tell you that if you go to actionnewsgame.com, you can buy it. It is now available and shipping. If you kickstarted it, please make sure you go check your email, check your spam if it's not in your inbox. We have already sent that out. People have tracking numbers. It is on their way to them as we speak. But if you didn't get a chance, go buy it now. Action News, the game of television news, allows you and your friends and family to have the wildest, most insane local television news broadcast of all time in your living room using real stories. You can head to my my Twitter at Justin R. Young to see a little explainer video with me in character as my television anchor character, walking you through some of the rules there. So go ahead and check it out.
Be Like Knots. His is out for delivery today. And also Be Like Knots and support this show in whatever way works for you. dailytechnewsshow.com/support tells you all the ways. The main way is becoming a member of our Patreon, which gives you all kinds of cool perks and chances to interact with other members of the DTNS audience, the smartest audience in the world. You can be part of them as well. And you can wear it on your person as a covering that humans need at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. Don't forget, I'm heading to the St. Louis area beginning September 6th and 7th. Thank you, Roger Chang, for putting that in there. Does anyone know of a location with good broadband? I think I'm covered for the 6th. I'm pretty close to setting up a place for the 7th, but more suggestions are welcome, and I'll be scheduling a meetup there. So if you got questions or suggestions, send them to feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com.
That's our email address. Send anything you like. We love getting your feedback. We're also live if you can join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 20:30 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Chris Christensen, the amateur traveler, will talk for more than 30 to 60 seconds tomorrow as our guest.
Yay.
Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Robot in the chat room said, so Tom is a robot as well. This is not news.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. How do you
Come
think we
on.
get the show done?
Catch up.
I hope I wasn't delayed. There were a couple times where I'm like,
Oh no, you sounded fine to us.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We never had any more problems with you. So
it was Justin was buffering to me, but nobody else was, even when Roger talked. But I was like, I think it's me.
You sure that wasn't just Justin's like rhetoric was so powerful?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't make fun of Justin's stutter.
No.
No, as long as it seemed fine to you. There were a couple times where I'm like, I think I might be jumping in on somebody.
No, I didn't notice anything. It was all good.
Okay, cool.
What should we call this show, Roger Chang?
All right. Shabbat. Canada, the beta test of countries.
Come here, Sam.
Discording Canada first. Let's see. A person writer. Night. Get it.
But which one is the best one?
Samsung safe. No. Oh, Samsung, the Guardians of the Galaxy Note 9. Yeah.
Just on the edge of length. That could work.
There's
What if you just say the Guardians of the Galaxy Note 9? I mean,
that could work.
Yeah.
Try that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obvious it's Samsung.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're all thrilled with it because we are speechless.
Speechless.
It's been a day. Man.
Everyone, cartwheels.
Throw in the towel. I'm like, is it 3 p.m.? Nap time.
Is it nap time yet?
Patrick Norton. That's a Patrick Norton special. Yeah.
Totally.
Nap time.
Is it nap time yet?
No, that's time out. It's like if you want to
does both. Yeah, he also does that.
Nap time. Time out.
Whoa, time out. Is it nap time yet? Yeah.
Step back.
I'm Patrick Norton. This is my Halloween costume. There's more to Patrick than those two things. I kid. I could never fill that man's shoes. It's much
physically good. They're too wide.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Obvious.
Physically, it doesn't fit.
The galaxy is huge, Beatmaster says. I kind of like that.
Do that.
The galaxy is huge. Yeah, let's do that.
Wish my bank account was huge.
Me too.
I'm sure you do. I think all of us do.
Bigger.
Some of that.
We all wish Roger's bank account was bigger.
We'll make it a space account.
Space Force.
Space Force. Sounds like such a toy line.
Or the Horde. I know it does. It really.
I mean, yeah.
Sounds like a cartoon.
It's fun. I mean, everything when I was sort of setting up that story, it's like, this is all facts, but it sounded silly coming out of my mouth.
Space Force.
The Assistant Secretary of Defense of Space. Second in command.
Go.
Secretary.
It's weird. It's very odd.
I mean, I would be fascinated to see this roll out in a different political environment.
Yeah, totally.
Because I don't think it would be. I mean, to your point, Roger. Yes, it does need to be in the future, but we're living in a world where like SpaceX took down the cost to launch a rocket.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not saying that space isn't important, but from a purely organizational standpoint, you're literally just gonna increase your overhead because you now duplicate staff that the Air Force already runs under Space Command to do a lot of that stuff.
Yes, and I don't disagree, but I do think that this is a field that like will only year by year exponentially become not only more important to American defense, but also to securing our ability to create a place for commerce in space and not be restricted. I mean, the other major players here have no interest in any kind of American commerce going on.
So,
don't you just take the division that's doing this in the Air Force and make them Space
Yeah,
Force?
I mean, I mean, essentially that's
duplicate. I totally agree with you, but you don't have to duplicate. You can.
I mean,
well, no, but I'm not duplicating those specific tasks. I'm just talking about duplicating of your upper echelon terms of management,
like your infrastructure, because you have to have a separate.
Exactly.
Some things that are separate that are okay.
Like you have HR, you have pay.
No, and that goes to your point earlier that what the Pentagon wants to do is make them be fewer divisions and more efficiencies between the branches.
Because they I mean, a lot of the money that the military doesn't spend on R&D goes into personnel. I mean, it's just
what if you I mean, they're already trying to do that with the branches. What if they make this part of that?
So I mean, it goes to a larger issue in the military where, it's just very, and some would argue it's like a corporation. You have too much middle management. There's too much of the middle. Yeah. And so a lot of your costs are there. And what you need to do is streamline it. But I don't necessarily think, at least the way what I've read, doesn't necessarily see any cost advantage to the military. And the side issue is that it is a military branch. Would it be better if there was if we either upgrade or we have just a very distinct space department that handles that?
You mean
because the reason why is that the militaries in space have always been kind of a no-go zone, because when the outer space treaty that most people
that's a separate issue from the efficiency and cost issue, though. Now you're bringing up a new concern.
The new concern is, like, if it was a civilian agency, there would be less pushback, but because that
has nothing to do with your point you started with about cost. Okay.
Well, no, I'm trying to add new points to everything.
You're trying to win the argument. I get it.
No. Well, I do think it makes sense for there to be a military force, just because, and I thought that, I watched the Pence speech. I thought he did a fairly credible job of explaining, not far-flung things, but like the demonstrations that have been done specifically by Russia and China on eliminating satellites. That, like, these are technologies that are being demonstrated.
Yeah. And we've developed those back in the 80s, and we did not deploy them for a very specific reason. They're self-defeating, right? Once you put and explode an object in space, that's a lot of debris that starts circulating and forming a cloud. And the problem with that is, if enough people do that, you can literally void entire areas of space where you can launch objects through, because they're going to run through it. Right, like even a little paint chip.
I understand, but let's also focus on it not blowing up and it just being disabled.
And Space Force could be their mission could be like, make sure that nobody goes up and starts blowing things up. Their mission might not be start blowing things up. It might be, this is how we stop the other countries who aren't seeing the problem with doing this.
And and my argument to say to that is, we already do that. The Air Force that's one of their missions.
Well, then we're back to your original point, which I think is your stronger point, which is not that we don't need this, but that it's
already, all those jobs are already being done. They're not being done poorly. Like, I think if you were to point out and say, like, the Air Force really just kind of kind of messed up on this and did a really poor job managing that aspect of their mission. Yeah, okay, maybe you had an argument, but they're not. They're actually pretty good at it.
Yeah, I do not know enough about internal DoD politics to argue with you on the idea that it would be, a duplication of efforts for some of that stuff. But I do think that this is not about now or the job that the Air Force has done in the past. Nor do I think necessarily that it was when the Air Force was created. It was about how the Army had handled air power prior to that. I think it's about, this is the future. You want to look forward. Now, I think the larger argument is that the creation of the Air Force, post World War II, created a large trend through even the 90s of that all warfare could be solved via the air, because we had this, relatively speaking, new and exciting toy that I think has kind of been proven wrong, right? So there is certainly whenever there is new money for new technology, there is going to be an effort to want to demonstrate why it should continue to be getting money at the kind of scale that it is getting at. So I can see where that is. However, I do think that 5 years from now, space is going to look a lot different than it does now.
No,
and now it's going to look a lot different, and it does not. It seems to make sense to me to say we need somebody for whom this is going to be a department for which this is going to be its sole focus.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, that it shouldn't, that there shouldn't be a space objective, but it's part of the thing is that there's always been a, unfortunately, I mean, I talked to Tom about this earlier. It's like there's a huge amount of political weight around this. I'm not talking about the president or political. I'm just talking within the Department of Defense. I mean, there's just there's a huge web of fiefdoms, internal politics get set up, and so there might be, but it's everything I've read has pointed the way that maybe, but you're essentially increasing the bureaucracy in order to do something you already do right now. But maybe with the hope down the line, their mission objectives expand. I don't know. I mean, part of
you're not. Let me put it this way, Roger, because this could be simply an argument about what the timing should be. Do you think there will be a time when a separate force would be necessary?
So
that it would be, or do you think it will always be more efficient to be run out of the Air Force?
So back in the 90s, there's actually a lot of talk. There was some talk about this, about upgrading.
Can I pause this for 2 seconds just for some breaking news?
Oh.
This from CNBC. Tesla board plans to meet with advisors next week to ramp up going private talks and is likely to ask Elon Musk to recuse himself from that process.
From the process, not from the process
of going private.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying, Elon, you can't tweet anymore. All right. And you can't promise investors they get to stay in.
No more of this $420 private.
Because you're risking an SEC violation with the tweets. And most of the financial advisors I've read are like, we don't understand how you can keep existing investors and go private. That doesn't make any sense to us.
Yeah. So
we should continue this conversation on the audio stream.
Yes.
Goodbye, video folks.
Not to be abrupt. Let's wrap it up a little more gently for folks. Thanks for watching the video. That's the breaking news. There's not much more to say. We might carry on the conversation about Space Force. We might have a few more things to say about Mr. Musk, but we appreciate you watching. And audio folks, stick around. There's more to come.